Now on weekends, when he was around, my father came over to take me skating on my own. My mother staying home to paint, waving goodbye to us as we set off. He called me Small Fry. Hey, Small Fry, let's blast. We're living on borrowed time. I assumed Small Fry meant the kind of French fries left at the bottom of the bag, cold and crusty. I thought he was calling me a runt or misbegotten. Later, I learned fry is an old word for young fishes, sometimes thrown back into the sea to give them more time to grow. Okay, fat fry, let's go, I said. Once my skates were on, sometimes he worried he was getting too thin. They say, I need to gain weight, he said. Who? I asked. People at work, he said, standing in the middle of the room with his skates on. What do you guys think? Other times he worried he was getting a paunch and asked us about that too. We would head for Stanford University. On this day, the pavement was still wet from the rain. The palm trees that gave Palm Drive its name grew in the dirt between the sidewalk and the road, the roots winding beneath the old cement path, so the cement was rigid severely and layered over several times, a messy, uneven layers, but these hadn't worked to hold down the roots, each layer buckling up. We bounced to our knees to absorb the shock. Fronds had fallen from the trees, sometimes blocking the path, so we had to step around them into the dirt on our skates. The missing fronds left a pattern on the trunks like fishes stacked. I wish I'd been a Native American Indian, he said, looking up at the hills beyond the university. From far away, they appeared smooth and unblemished. The neon green blades shot up through the dirt clods 2 or 3 days after the first heavy rain and remained through winter. They walked barefoot, he said, on those hills, before all this was even here. I knew from school they left traces where they had ground acorns into flour on slabs of rock. I love the green hills, he said, but I like them best when they're yellow, dry. I like them green, I said, not understanding how anyone could like them when they were dead. We reached the oval and then the Stanford quadrangle with its covered, shaded pathways made of diamonds of cement in alternating earth tone colors like a faded harlequin costume. Want to get on my shoulders? He leaned down and grasped me under my armpits. I was 9 and small for my age. He hoisted me up. His weight tilted and bobbed. We did a loop around the square, under the arches, past the gold numbers on the glass door. He held my shins in his hands, but let go when he started to lose his balance. He tripped again, struggling to stay upright. I swayed terrifyingly high up, and then he fell. On the way down, I worried for myself, for my face and my knees, the parts of me that might hit the pavement. Over time, I learned he would always fall. Still, I let him carry me because it seemed important to him. I felt this like a change of pressure in the air. This was part of his notion of what it meant to be a father and daughter. If I said no, he would retract. We got up and brushed ourselves off. He wound up with a bruise on his butt and a scrape on his hand. I got a skinned knee and headed for the drinking fountain at the side of the quadrangle. It was built onto a wall of patterned tiles From there, I could see the green leaves in another, smaller courtyard beyond us like stained glass. I liked looking at sunlight from the shade, the way it didn't wash all around and blind you, but was a separate glowing thing. We skated farther into the university. The asphalt was rough, full of rocks. Skating over it tickled my throat, and my thighs made a tune play in my bones. We skated uphill past the fountain and the clock to the metal tables in the courtyard of a Tresidier cafe, where we sat for a moment and drank apple juice. I strummed my legs with the weight of the skates and poked my fingers through the cool metal lattice of the chair. There was an oak above us and raised part of the courtyard with silver ridges twisting up the trunk and deep grooves with black at their centers. On the way back through the campus, on the slopping downhill on the rough cement, I was a tuning fork for the road, flying out ahead of him. Ah, ah, I sang, my throat vibrating with stones. You're right, kid, he said, but don't let it go to your head. I won't, I said. I'd never heard the phrase before, let it go to your head. He pointed out the stained glass and golden tiles, the way the masons had used local sandstone from the pillars to the big rocks that made up the exterior walls. The stone had thick granules of sand in it. The light gave it dimension, made it look faceted and rough. Some areas had carvings like the stone was embroidered. Do you think these stonemasons came from other countries to do this? He asked, touching one of the big rectangles tufted out like a pillow. I saw the building the way he did then, just a pile of stones that human hands had carved and placed. I began to see how inside my father there were two competing qualities, one sensitive and specific as a nerve in a tooth, the other unaware, blunt and bland, because he noticed the details and care of the craftsmen who built this place, the way they chipped at every block and arranged it. I knew he must be capable of noticing other people too, of noticing me. You know, I didn't go to college, he said. Maybe you won't go either. Better just to go out and get into the world. If I didn't go to college, I would be like him. At that moment, I felt like we were the center of the world. He carried it with him, this feeling of center. They teach you how other people think. During your most productive years, he said, it kills creativity, makes people into bozos. It made sense to me. Still, I wondered why he always wanted to skate around Stanford, why he seemed to love it. If he didn't believe in it, he's just got a chip on his shoulder, my mother said. He just has a chip on his shoulder. There. When we crossed the street, he grabbed my hand. Do you know why we hold hands, he asked. Because you're supposed to. I hoped he'd reply, because I'm your father. In other than these crossings, we didn't hold hands, and I looked forward to it. Nope, he said. It's so if a car is about to hit you, I can throw you out of the street. On University Avenue, he pointed to a bum crouched in a nook with a cardboard sign. That's me in 2 years, he said. A few minutes later, as we got into the residential streets farther away from the main street of the town and closer to my house, he farted. The sound loud and high like a balloon opening, interrupting the silence. He kept skating like nothing happened. When he did it again, I looked away. After the third time, he muttered, "Sorry." "It's okay," I said, mortified for him. When my father and I got back to my block, kids were out playing in the yards. Hold on here, let's see. Okay, we'll just start here again. When my father and I got back to my block, kids were out playing in the yards and on the sidewalks. Straight across from our house lived a tall, short-haired woman named Jan, whose husband worked at Next. Farther down the long driveway that ran beside Jan's house was the dark wooden house of a woman who dated my father when my mother was pregnant with me, and who was now married and had a baby boy. It was a strange coincidence to move here and find ourselves living on a line with two people connected to my father. My mother said he attracted coincidences in an uncanny way. We stopped on the sidewalk across from our house, and a few men who lived nearby gathered around my father. 3 fathers holding 3 babies. They wanted his opinions, wanted to know what he thought about this or that. My mother's chased after the toddlers to give the fathers a chance to talk. I stood nearby, proud that it was my father they wanted to talk with. They discussed people I'd never heard of and companies I didn't know. Soon the babies began to fuss, squirming, letting out little cries and yelps. My father continued to talk. Hardware, software, the same discussions that seemed to come up over and over with all the men we saw in Palo Alto those days. All 3 babies began to wail. My father talked as if nothing had changed, and the men tried to listen, bouncing the babies who wailed louder. He talked louder, faster, and his words got through the noise. His voice was high, loud, and nasal, with sharp points at the end of his phrases that hurt my ears and knifed into my sternum. And I wondered if that's what it was like for the babies who were bawling. My fathers had to stop talking and take them away. Back inside, he and I stood by the radiator and took off our skates, and my mother joined us. My parents liked each other, you could tell. I leaned over to make folds in the legs of my jeans, pulling the extra fabric over itself and rolling it up. This gave the impression of a thinner leg. With my jeans pegged, my proportions were right. I favored a big t-shirt that bagged around my upper body, my legs like sticks poking out. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Pegging my jeans," I said. Do you think that's cool, he asked. Yes, I do. Oh, he said. Then, in a mocking tone, he said, Oh, Biff. Oh, Blaine. I hope you like my jeans. Steve. My mother said I was smiling, but I could tell she didn't like it. Maybe she'll marry Thad, he said. Dirk, Blaine, Trent, Trav. These were his names for my imaginary future boyfriends and husbands. I was none. The thought of marriage irrelevant to my life. I laughed too. I knew it was a joke, but I wondered if he picked ugly, I don't know that word, names and fretted about my marriage prospects because he thought I was ugly or without promise. Or maybe you'll marry Christian, he said. Christian lived across the street and was around my age, with blonde hair and gold-rimmed glasses and a trace of an accent from Georgia, where he was from. He wore plaid shorts and t-shirts, and he was skinny, and he did his homework in a tiny scrawl with a mechanical pencil. He also had a single mother. I liked him, but I knew I didn't want him to be my boyfriend. Once a month or so, another boy named Kai with dark hair, petal-light skin, and red lips would visit his father, who lived in the house beside us. He poked his head up at the window that looked into my bedroom window, a surprise. He was shy and didn't want to play, but his presence gave me such a thrill I thought I might pick him if I was required to choose a husband, but I didn't say it. Let me see your teeth, I said. To change the subject, show me how they come together like a zipper. No way, he said, as if I might be trying to mock him, when I felt only admiration and curiosity. Please, I said. He leaned down and opened his mouth. No overbite, no underbite, the spaces in between, a mountain range and sky. They're amazing, my mom said, how they come together like that. He closed his mouth. Let me see this, he said. I showed him. Interesting. And yours? He looked into my mother's mouth. Her bottom teeth were fine, but crowded, like too many guests mingling in a small room. They don't look great. They so great. Might want to see about that, he said. Even though he'd been kind just a moment before. She winced and closed her mouth. It was as if the magnet changed direction suddenly, and now they repulsed each other. It was not possible to know in advance when the switch would occur. Maybe she'll look like Brooke Shields, he said, about me. Who's Brooke Shields, I asked. A model, my mother said. With these really great eyebrows, my father said. After that, he said, he laughed, saying something like, maybe you will, in a trailing voice across the lawn. He was in stocking feet, carrying his skates over his shoulder. When he left, it was like stepping into a dark room after being in the bright sunlight. It was dim and uniform, washed out with the after-image of light. I played the flute. My father ordered new tropical fish patterned sheets for my bed. My cousin Sarah was coming to visit in a couple of months. Before he'd arrived, these things were exciting, but for days after his visits, they didn't seem so important anymore. It would take time to build it all back up again. I saw now. In my eyebrows, I promise.